Hello, everyone. I think it's about time to get started, don't you?
Sure.
Fantastic. Well, my name is Cliff. I'm the children's coordinator. I buy the books, I go to the schools. Anything in this room, I brought it in. It's wonderful to meet you all. I'm very happy to do this tonight. All of our events are made possible by your support, all of you collectively. Shopping here, coming to our events, supporting our favorite authors. All of those help us and the community at large. Those dollars go to our roads, our free zoo, all of the people who work here, live here in the neighborhood, or in this city. So we thank you, all of us, from our hearts. For everyone watching from home, you can interact with the event virtually just by dropping thoughts or questions into the chat. I will be monitoring, and we'll have a bright Q&A toward the end of the event. I'm very excited to have some cues to be made. Now, tonight's event, to start, Sharelle Byars Moranville is the author of critically acclaimed middle grade novels Over the River and 27 Magic Words, which received starred reviews in School Library Journal and Kirkus Reviews, and was a notable children's book in the Lightning Charts. She lives in West Des Moines, Iowa, though I heard not. Sharelle's newest book, Forget Me Not Blue, is an intimate and heartfelt middle grade novel that follows two siblings fighting to stay together amidst the ripple effects of addiction and generational trauma. Kirkus Reviews calls it a poignant portrayal of the heavy burden parental instability places on family. I think we all join me in welcoming Sharelle to
Thanks, Cliff. you all so much for being here. I'm going to start by reading just a little bit of flat copy, which I didn't write, but the person who did write it, who is someone in marketing at Holiday House, got it just right. Moranville's lyrical intimate prose explores the generational ripple effects of addiction and the unbreakable bonds of family as Sophie searches for hope in the most important story arc. That's short, but it encapsulates to me the two most important things about the story. One, it is a story of generational addiction. And two, it is an intimate story. 10-year-old Sophie speaks right to the reader's heart, and she doesn't hold back. She lets you know her thoughts, her feelings, the sensory details of her world. And the reason that's important to me is because I think sometimes when there's a group that is not just like our group, we tend to generalize about that because we don't have any specifics to not generalize. And I think if we can get to know a specific person really well, and that person's family and life, I think we can look at that group and understand it with a lot more insight and inclusiveness. And that's what I want readers to do when they read about Sophie, is really see up close this complex, both dark and very light world. So, let me tell you a little about myself and how I came to write this story. I began life with a strong sense of social justice. I know that may sound silly, but I remember when I was 5 in Sunday school, I was introduced to the Golden Rule. For anybody here who learned about the Golden Rule in Sunday school? Some yes, some no. Okay, for those who haven't encountered it before, the Golden Rule is a teaching that runs through most major religions. And it says basically, we should treat other people as we like to be treated. So when I heard this rule, my question to my grandma was, why is it, I understand the rule, I understand what I'm supposed to do, but why is it called the Golden Rule? And in my greedy little 5-year-old heart, I think I was hoping there was a monetary reward for following that rule. But my grandma said, no, that's not how it works. It's called the Golden Rule, because if everybody did treat others as they wanted to be treated, we would have a golden world. And I thought that image was a wonderful image, and I've always cherished it. That was when I was 5. When I was 7, I was starting to ask questions. And the questions were all along the line of, if we're supposed to treat other people as we want to be treated, why are we treating some people much better than we're treating other people? And the answer I got was, honey, you're too young to be worrying about that. But I did worry about it. So it probably won't surprise you to know that my first job after I got my bachelor's degree was in social work, because I sort of had a social worker's heart. But I went back to school and got 2 more degrees. And spent several years in academia, and then made a shift and spent several years in the corporate world, and then made another shift and spent several very nice years as a children's author. But during this time of academia and corporate and through being a children's writer, I never let go of my social justice concerns, especially as they affect families and children. Until I relocated a year ago, I was a volunteer in a women's prison. And I was also an advocate outside the prison when the women were trying to leave the confines of the prison, some of whom had been there 25 years, and re-enter the world. That's a really hard thing to do, which is why there's so much recidivism. But whether I was inside with the women or outside with the women, the most general concern I heard was, what about my kids? What will happen to my kids? Who will take care of my kids? Will my kids ever forgive me? Why was I stupid enough to choose drugs over my kids? I was also for a while a court-appointed special advocate, CASAs they're called. I think they probably have a CASA program in Missouri. I see nodding there. CASAs advocate before the court for kids who have been abused, abandoned, or neglected and are in need of assistance. And I got to know several kids, and they were all in need of assistance for sure, but they were much more than that. They were kids with interests and talents. They were kids who loved and were cherished in return. They were kids who got really good at finding bright spots in dark corners. They were kids who were sometimes betrayed spectacularly by the adults in their lives. But usually there were also helping adults who would lift them up. And I wrote Forget Me Not Blue for those kids to be seen, well and truly seen. Let me give you a thumbnail of Con and Sophie's world. Con is Sophie's 13-year-old brother, and Sophie is 10. They are very close. They never stop having each other's backs. They love their mom, and she truly loves them, but she also struggles with addiction. And the family teeters on the edge. For the last 2 years, they have had a period of unprecedented stability because she stayed sober. But even though she has stayed sober, they are still poor and on the edge. Earlier, they were homeless. Sophie was too young to remember this, but Con remembers it. Before the story begins, they have been abandoned once already by their mom. They get most of their food from the food pantry or from community center free lunches when school is in session, and the much appreciated free breakfast and lunch at school. They get their clothing mostly free from the clothing pantry at the community center. They live in a shabby house that is soon to be condemned. And yet, that's the dark stuff. And yet, Sophie is an avid reader. She retreats into books. She's a smart enough kid to know that all the kids' books end well. So she takes great comfort in knowing that the story she's involved in is going to end well, unlike perhaps not her own story. Con, when he was in 5th grade, when Con was in 5th grade, which is where Sophie was headed, he won the prestigious Student Explorer Award. And Sophie has her eye firmly on that for next year. Con wants to be a teacher. He wants to follow in Mr. Bloom's footsteps. Mr. Bloom is one of the few good male role models he has. Sophie, on the other hand, plans to be a teen movie star because legend has it her grandmother was a teen movie star. And by her logic, she can make a lot of fast money, help her mom, help Con go to college, then she can be what she wants to be, which is the head librarian. And the thing about head librarians is they have the key to the building. And if she has the key to the building, she and Con can have overnights at the library. And Sophie can imagine nothing finer than an overnight in the library with her brother Con. Writing those parts of the book was easy and fun. Writing the darker parts of the books, which are just about even with the positive parts of the book, was hard. I found myself not wanting to be quite so specific in Sophie's feelings and thoughts and what was happening to her in her sensory world. And my editor had to push me to write those dark parts and to write them specifically if I was trying to truly show a family that was caught up in generational addiction and poverty. So I wrote them. I wrote the part where Sophie finds out she's not going to get to leave foster care and go home to Con and her great-grandfather. It was sickening to write. I wrote the part where she goes to visit her mom in federal prison for the first time. That was a little more balanced because on one hand, her feelings were just gut-wrenching. She longed to go, she was afraid to go, she didn't want to go at all, she couldn't wait to go. But on the other hand, when she and her mom were physically reunited, it was also heartwarming. So there's the dark and the light here. I loved writing the red shoe parts. You don't know about the red shoes yet, but when I read, you'll find out about the red shoes. I loved writing the character of Gunner. Gunner is the great-grandfather who the kids don't even know exists until one day he turns up in a rusty old truck with a box of fresh, beautiful strawberries. And amazingly, their mom seems not only glad to see him, but she seems to be expecting him. And the kids wonder why they've never even heard of the guy. They wonder why every day, at least once, he disappears. They wonder why he has such a hunger for fresh fruits and vegetables, and why he likes to share fresh fruits and vegetables with them, like their rubies and pearls. And I'll let you think about what maybe this says about where Gunner has been all this time. But by midway through the book, Sophie, who has been very suspicious of Gunner, she starts to really see him. And when she sees him, she comes to love him. A great gardener, so all of my good characters end up in the garden. And Gunner and Sophie and the whole family end up in the garden as part of healing. But the trauma they're healing from is a big trauma, so they need big healing. I loved writing the part of Mr. Bloom, although he's a very minor character, but he's a stand-in for the good educators out there. And I know some of them. Some of them are here now. Okay, I'm going to read you the opening passage. Let me set it up for you. It's early summer and school is just out. The mom is in her bedroom asleep. Con is outside Sophie's door, knocking to wake her up to go to swim class. So here we go. So she tried to wake up, but the blanket of sleep was so comfy. So opened the door. Why didn't her brother open it himself? Then she remembered. Connie had put a deadbolt on the inside of her door. A couple of nights ago, one of her mom's friends had stumbled into the kitchen where Con and Sophie were making sandwiches. He caught up a handful of Sophie's hair and stuck his face in it, making weird noises. She tried to twist away, but he didn't turn loose. Con had planted his open hand in the guy's face and shoved him. You touch my sister again, you'll be sorry. The man sneered as he staggered into the backyard where their mom and her friends were partying. Sophie glared at him. You okay, Con asked, smoothing Sophie's hair. She nodded, but her heart was racing. And it was racing now. What if Con hadn't been there? But now she could lock herself in her room anytime their mom was partying or that guy came around. She unlocked the door. Swim lessons, Con said. I know. You need to pee before I shower? She nodded. She heard Con throwing beer cans into the recycle bin. All the clanging and banging might wake their mom, which was probably the idea. Connie was angry about the party, but it hadn't been all that bad. People had mainly stayed outside because the weather was nice. Still, Sophie hadn't been able to sleep because of the pounding music and people laughing and arguing. Sophie knew the regulars like Lily with the big, beautiful eyes. Lily had been around ever since Sophie could remember. Last night she'd worn so many eyelashes she looked like a llama. Bet she shoplifted them on the way here, Con had muttered to Sophie. But Lily had a big heart, like their mom. Lily stole stuff and gave it to people she liked. Sometimes it was a pretty t-shirt or fancy underwear or sunglasses. Once it had been pills. When Con understood what was happening, he'd taken Sophie to the attic, and for the first time in a long time, they'd slept side by side on the floor. She had felt safe, even though Connie said what Lily was giving away downstairs could kill a person. Does Mom know the pills could kill her? Yeah, she knows. That was good. Their mom would never take pills like that because her kids needed her. When they saw Lily a few days after the night of the pills, she'd been beat up so bad she could hardly see and her arm was in a cast. Sophie was sorry because Lily was nice. She stole from the wrong person, Con said. When Sophie came out of the bathroom, she crossed the hall to her mom's room. Sophie opened the door a teeny crack to make sure she wouldn't see anything she didn't want to see, like a boyfriend without any clothes on. But there was only her mom, asleep, with her feet sticking out from under the covers, a streak of sunshine across them. The room was painted her favorite color, forget-me-not blue. Sophie crept in, feeling the cool from the air conditioner in the window. The t-shirts and scarves and her mom's shorts and sundresses on the floor were soft under her feet. Some came from the rich lady her mom cleaned for, but most were thrifting treasures. Sophie stood beside the bed, watching the way her mom's nose moved a tiny bit with each breath. She was so beautiful. Her silvery blonde hair matched the hair of the girl in the photo on the table. That girl was Summer Jones, Sophie's grandmother, who had been a teen movie star. Sophie might be a movie star someday. She could make a lot of money and help her mom. In the kitchen, Con reminded her they needed to leave in 15 minutes. I know. He had grown another foot in the night. His shoulders had gotten wider and his feet bigger. Soon he wouldn't fit in the tiny attic space, the space he staked a claim on when they moved into this house 2 years ago. They had never lived any place for that long before. But before, they always slept in the same room, or the same car. That time they were homeless, which she didn't remember, but Connie did. She didn't understand why he wanted to be in the attic alone when together was better. She put on her swimsuit, then a pair of blue and white striped shorts with red stars, which she loved so much she wore them any time they were clean. She topped it off with a white t-shirt with a sparkly red star on the front they found at the clothing pantry. Red was her favorite color. The shirt had a stain near the bottom, but most things from the clothing pantry had stains. She tucked in that part. The pipes clanged as Con turned off the shower. She couldn't find her flip-flops in her room. She looked in the living room and the kitchen. The Uno deck was on the kitchen table exactly where it belonged, thank goodness. Since her mom was having parties, maybe they should put the cards where they wouldn't get damaged. But moving them could be bad luck. Playing Uno was the ritual. Uno meant one in Spanish, and there were 3 of them. The triangle had 3 corners and could fit inside a circle, and circles were safe. Once when Sophie was in 1st grade, social services had almost taken Con and Sophie away because their mom had left them alone in the trailer for a week. She'd gone to a New Year's Eve party and not come home. Con had called her and begged, but she was with friends in Texas. Sophie had tried to be brave and not cry, but Connie really had been brave, and they'd almost kept it a secret. When their mom came back, she'd been so sorry, and they had to forgive her. She promised on her life she would never do it again. She loved them, and they loved her so much. They'd bundled up and gone outside in snow and sunshine and a forget-me-not blue sky. They'd held hands and marched in a circle singing a silly song until it ended with ashes, ashes, we all fall down. And then they crumpled into the snow laughing. They did that over and over until the trees spun. Sophie remembered the cold on her cheeks, the shadows on the snow, the birds fighting at the feeder in front of the trailer park office. She took a deep breath and let it out. The danger of being taken away by social services was way in the past, but it felt as close as the breeze stirring her hair. Where were her flip-flops? She finally found one under the steps, a crumpled beer can beside it. Connie was going to be so mad about the mess. The pile of clothing was tangled in a broken folding chair. A turned over cooler gaped open, and cigarette butts and cans were everywhere. She searched for the other flip-flop, walking through the wet grass. When she found it inside the overturned cooler, her heart beat a dance of relief. The flip-flops were her only shoes. The fact that the flip-flops were her only shoes says a lot about Sophie. But a few pages in, things go from bad to worse when one of those flip-flops breaks and Sophie is literally barefoot in the middle of the street, which is humiliating and frightening. But Con, who's managed to make a little money doing errands for Mr. Bloom, takes Sophie to Walmart and lets her pick out a new pair of shoes. She has never in her life had the privilege of doing that. Her favorite color is red, as you know, so she picks a pair of red canvas shoes with thickish black soles divided by a white line. And after Con pays for them, which she is just so proud of, she's practically popping, she goes in the restroom and washes her feet, puts on the shoes, looks at herself in the mirror, and although she can only see herself from here up, she sees that those shoes have made her beautiful all over. That's kind of Sophie's life. It's a paradox. On one hand, it is hard. On the other hand, sometimes things feel pretty wonderful. I promise you the ending is hopeful because Sophie's right. Kids' books have to have a hopeful ending. Thank you. I hope I have some questions.
So, well, I have a question.
Yes.
Before we get to the book, I guess were you always a reader? Do you have kids' books that you read or books that you read when you were a kid that you hold on to that influence you in the same way that Sophie finds refuge in books?
You know, I would love to say yes, but I have to say no. I grew up in a wonderful family. But they were a family who didn't have the time or the money or even the sense of importance of books. I was an utterly loved and cherished child and had many things, but books was not one of them. But when I was in 7th grade, my school got this gift of a shelf full of books, and that was the beginning for me. And I can say since then, I think with honesty, that I have read a little bit of fiction every day of my life. It isn't a day without a little fiction reading. So
That's great.
I turned out to be a book reader.
So the kids that you have in your book, are they an amalgam from your CASA and social work experience, or was there one specific kid that you kind of tracked what happened to them?
No, I do know what happened to some of those kids. Others no, but none, no. I didn't have any particular kid or even any family particularly in mind. I find that if I have anything, if I get too close to anything that really exists, when I write about it, it goes flattish because I don't have to stir up all that creative energy to create. If that makes sense.
I wondered as I read the book and that I loved,
Thank you.
how you could keep up with such vibrant characters with all of those emotions of such bright things happening, like going to Walmart and getting those shoes to, being scared that some man's gonna do something he shouldn't. And you not only did that for Sophie, but you did it for Connie, for Gunnar. It was really amazing. How do you, what's the process there?
It's kind of embarrassing to talk about oneself, but my editor at Holiday House, this is the 3rd book I've done with her, and I have had some wonderful editors, but this editor has worked with me only on books where the main character has been 10, because she thinks I have a real aptitude for writing 10-year-olds. And she also points out that there is not a lot of middle grade literature, which middle grade literature is what kids 8 to 12, that's middle grade literature. There are not a lot of middle grade literature novels that really deal primarily with feelings as opposed to plot. I think I rely heavily on sensory detail and really how the character experiences the world through what they see and hear and feel and smell and taste. And I try to do that with all my characters. So I don't know if that answers what you're asking, but that's the area where I'm comfortable. It's in a very sensory, intimate world. I want to be that way with my characters.
Yep, I could feel it in all the characters, even Tommy, and then the introduction of his mother, who became grandmother. You know, and they were a bit like Mr. Bloom in and out, but it's also so they equally stuck with me in a different way. So.
I have a niece who's also a writer, and she says, I love my characters into existence. And I that pleases me to think that might be what I do.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But you asked about the reading, Cliff, and I said I read a little fiction every day. I write a little every day too.
Okay, I'm sure that they feed one another, right? That's great. I love her routine.
There are days when I don't write and I'm crabby. And I haven't written for a couple of days.
Beware.
Readers beware.
Do you have another book in the works?
Oh, I have more than another book in the works. I have another book that is written except for the last chapter. And, you know, really, just the last chapter. But this book was published on the 8th of August. And when a book is published, suddenly the publicists need a lot from the writer. And it seemed like there for a while, every day, there would be something new that they needed, like 1,000 words on this, or 100 words on that, and I'm not complaining, mind you. It's just that's why I don't have the last chapter of the next book written.
But you have it in mind.
Yes, I do have it in mind. I just need time to write it. But I'm afraid there is, we'll see.
So you say that your editors push you to, or that you write about feelings more than plot, and your editors really pull that out of you or encourage that.
Yes.
Does that come from a place? Can you pinpoint what that comes from? Were you always sort of
I think where it
sensitive or in
comes
tune?
from, I think where it comes from is my childhood. I told you there weren't books in the environment. And there were no kids either. I was raised in a big family of older aunts and uncles and grandparents. And I had space, limitless imaginative space to create out of nothing. You know, I wasn't deprived, it's just a fact, I didn't have toys. This was after World War II, and you didn't have toys, really. So I would build a playhouse with nothing but a couple of washcloths and a matchbox. But to me, it was a playhouse, and a fine playhouse. So I think it comes from a very young age, needing to be creative and getting positive feedback from that creative process. And I remember my child feelings very well, both the good ones and the bad ones. My memories are very vivid. And I think that's where it comes from.
Excellent. Very good answer.
I'm not sure I can word this properly, but I've heard writers say something to the effect of, oh, it broke my heart when the character went in this direction or something. Almost implying that the character was leading the story rather than the writer. And I never quite understood that. Is that something you understand?
It's something I not only totally understand, but it is totally the way it works for me. I don't mean this to sound all woo-woo, because I know that most writers have a plot in mind, and I know generally what I want to create when I start. I want to create a book like this, but I don't have in mind innate of I don't know my characters yet at all. And so, yes, this does sound woo-woo, but I basically just open myself and I'm patient. And it comes together. So I totally understand writers not knowing what their characters are going to do. But not all writers, certainly. I have no idea the percentage of which writers. There's a term for it, plotters and pantsters. Plotters know where they're going, pantsters go by the seat of their pants or by the inspiration of, whatever. And I am definitely a pantster and a reviser. I have friends who have an outline and they just follow it and turn in their manuscript, not this kid.
Do you think of your characters, I guess specifically Con and Sophie, do you think of them outside of the context of this book? Like,
Absolutely.
do you check in on them periodically in
Those-
adulthood?
I'm so glad you asked that. Those kids are out there doing stuff right now. They're growing up.
Excellent.
And, I know there's going to be hard things ahead for them, but I know there's going to be good things ahead for them too.
Yeah, I have to admit, I wanted a sequel, and this is going to sound kind of shallow, but I loved Sophie's little comment about her signature style. And I tell you, often now when I'm getting dressed, I'm like, well, is this my signature style? Just those little pinpoints, like really have stuck with me.
She was spunky.
Oh, man.
I liked how spunky she was.
Yeah.
Do you have, are there a lot of 10-year-olds in your life or in your orbit?
No.
Do you?
I tell you, I make it all up.
Have you spoken to many who've read your books? I'm just curious if they see, if they can very easily see themselves in the characters, if they can, because I guess Sophie is, from what I've read, she seems to be like pretty emotionally intelligent and a
Yes.
kid who has to grow up quicker than they should. They do have that, but I'm just curious if kids around that age have let you know that they see that, or that they gravitate toward it, or they still seen.
Yes, and also, interestingly too, I sometimes hear from their parents. One of the nicest letters I have ever gotten about anything I wrote was from my second novel, which is over the river, and it too had a 10-year-old main character. And it had a scene in it, this is set after World War II, it had a scene in it where the dad, who's just home from the Navy, is washing this 10-year-old's hair. And other people in her life have washed her hair. But there's something in the way she feels it. She feels his attentiveness and his tenderness and his pleasure in doing this. And I got this really nice letter from the dad of a 10-year-old. And he said how much he loved that passage because it was exactly how he felt when he would wash his daughter's hair. So.
Excellent. That is, I can understand that. So, when I lived in books as a kid or in music as a teenager, it was because, they articulated something that I couldn't get to. So yeah, I can understand that.
Do you have a favorite book you've written?
It's always my last book.
Okay.
So right now, this is
That's
my
me.
favorite.
Okay.
Really, seriously. Oh, look at that cat. This really might be my favorite one, simply because it draws together so many threads in my life. There's often my books touch on things that are of interest to my family or to me in a familial context. There's no family here. This is people. This is more about, like I said, that darn golden rule, I want these people to be really seen. So I think this really is my favorite right now.
Is there anything in the book that you had to take out because it wouldn't work, or anything that you felt that was too much? Anything you wanted to see in the book that you didn't get to make real?
Well, first of all, so many people helped me with this book. My agent, I don't know how many iterations of this I went through for my agent before she even showed it to my editor. And when it was turned in, it was written a dual point of view. Connie told the chapter, then Sophie, then Connie, then Sophie. And then, though, when it was acquired, my editor said, please just write it all from Sophie's point of view. So yes, there has been a lot of stuff I wrote that didn't make the final cut. And there's been a lot of stuff I wrote that I certainly hadn't planned to write at the beginning. It's kind of a group project. And, it's important to have a good agent and a good editor, because they get you where you need to go. I didn't get there all on my own.
Any more questions? Then I guess we call it. Thank you so much. This
You're
was
welcome.
fantastic.
You're welcome. Thank you all for being here and asking good questions.
Thank you.